questions was like, how do you feel now that you're getting all this attention? But you're a murderer.
Oh my
God.
God.
Like, she just flat out said it. It was a lady from the UK, and I'm kind of like, okay. And everybody in the room just like jumped up and was like ready to like, am I, fight or am I okay?
Yeah.
They were freaking out for me, and I'm like, no, guys, I got this. Like, it's something that I'm gonna have to address.
Yeah.
Because it's always in my comments. Like, why are we glorifying a murderer and this and that and the other? And I don't want to have to remind people every single time that I'm not the one that committed the act of the kill. So, I'm a part of it.
Right.
But in the state of Missouri, there's no such thing as accessory to murder. So technically,
they couldn't charge you.
They couldn't charge me with accessory because that charge doesn't exist. So, I mean, had I been in another state, I would have been charged with accessory to commit murder.
Oh, that makes sense.
So,
okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, thank you.
Of all the interviews that Gypsy Rose Blanchard has done, this one, I would say, infuriated me the most. And I'm sure it did a lot of other people too. But we're just going to talk about that again because I did this last year. I'm going to do it again. Missouri. First degree premeditated murder is a person who commits the offense of murder in the first degree if they knowingly cause the death of another person after deliberation upon the matter. Now it's broken up into two parts. Under the age of 18 and above the age of 18. And Gypsy Rose Blanchard was only a month away from her 24th birthday. So what I would like to know is, hey, Gypsy, how does all that attention feel now? How does that infamy feel now? Accessory. There's two different types of accessory to commit murder, and that's usually before and after. In most jurisdictions, accessory to murder is a felony that can result in years in prison. Being an accessory is considered a separate offense from the crime itself. To be convicted of accessory to murder, the government must prove that the defendant intentionally and knowingly assisted the murder. The defendant's actions must be deliberate, not accidental or coerced. And that is different for different states and what type of law they may have as far as that. But accessory before the fact is when somebody helps someone else before they commit a murder. For example, they could be buying the gun, knowing that that person was going to use it on somebody else, and they did not stop it. They didn't warn anybody. They didn't call law enforcement. Accessory after the fact is when someone helps someone after they commit murder. An example could be driving a getaway car after the homicide. But there's also a different type of accessory charge that some states have, and that is if you're with somebody and you don't intentionally know that they plan on harming somebody and they do, and you neglect to not only intervene but try to stop that person, but you also don't try to call 911 or try to elicit some kind of help for that person that they are harming to stop the crime from happening. If you sit there, and even if you didn't intentionally know that they were going to do it, and you sit there and you watch them do it anyway, you could have, by duty and obligation, try to prevent it, but you did not. So you could be charged with accessory in that kind of scenario too. But it all depends on the state and what laws they have and their legal standard for that. But if you look into what that means, the defendant had knowledge of the crime either beforehand or afterward, and the defendant intentionally acted to aid the perpetrator, also called the principal offender. In the Gypsy Rose Blanchard case, Gypsy Rose Blanchard is the principal offender under Missouri statute for first degree premeditated homicide. She was over the age of 18 and she knowingly caused the death of another person. However, she also attempted murder twice before. On June 14th of 2011, and supposedly months prior to that, she attempted to take her mother's life 2 other times. And one of those is documented. When you solicit somebody else to commit the act for you, or hire somebody else to commit the act for you, you are still guilty of first-degree premeditated murder. And in Missouri, they have the death penalty for special heinous circumstantial crime. And jabbing somebody 17 times and partially decapping them, that is a heinous special circumstance that should have awarded her the death penalty. And in fact, she probably was facing the death penalty at first. The abuse excuse is what saved her life. But what I would really want to know is, you thought that you shouldn't have got as many years as you did? What did you believe under God and under the laws of man that you deserved? What do you think you deserve? That's what I want to know, because 10 years ain't nothing but a slap on the fucking wrist. But there is such thing as accessory, or AKA aiding and abetting a criminal in the state of Missouri. But that is not what Gypsy Rose Blanchard did. What she did was first-degree premeditated murder with the special circumstance of a heinous crime that should have landed her the death penalty. Gypsy Rose is the sole reason why Nicholas Godejohn was there, why he did what he did. Had she not been the person who solicited him and plotted this for years and manipulated him and coerced him, if anybody in this
Blanchard,
scenario
the girl that
was aiding and abetting
murdered her mother
and an accessory, it would be Nick himself to
I don't
Gypsy,
want
because
people
she
to
is the sole perpetrator of the crime. She's the person
look at you like this is Gypsy
solicited
Rose.
him
She's
and
famous
manipulated it.
for
I don't
killing
either.
her mother.
She
Shouldn't be
is
famous
the
for
most
something like
guilty
that.
party
Exactly.
out of the two of them. But that also completely throws out the abuse excuse, because it's one thing for you to be defending yourself from an imminent and immediate threat on your body, your person, and your safety, and take another person's life because of abuse. It's a totally different thing when you bring a third party into it and manipulate them for years after you failed to attempt on that same person's life twice before and couldn't get the job done, and you manipulate a third party to do it for you. That completely throws the abuse narrative out, because you now brought a third party into it. You now ruined the life of a third party as well. And it can also be said that that person possibly really did love you so much that he sacrificed what he felt and thought and was manipulated to believe was the only way to save you, to get you freedom, to save your life from this horrendous abuse, that you couldn't pick up a phone, that you couldn't call your dad, that you couldn't call 911, you couldn't tell a neighbor. No, I mean, but you can have sex in the backyard in front of the neighbor's house, but you couldn't let them know that you're supposedly being abused. None of it makes sense, because it's all bullshit. It's just a criminal defense strategy. And it worked, because it got her a sweetheart plea deal that first-degree murderers don't usually get, especially in the state of Missouri, and she took it for second degree. But it's backwards, because they incentivize the more guilty party to lie and to run with that, instead of taking the person who was honest from the very beginning and incentivizing them for their honesty and their cooperation, like they normally do in soliciting or hiring type of scenarios when it comes to homicide, and giving that person the plea deal to get out in 10 years. Despite who committed that act, it has nothing to do with that. So if anybody was acting as an accessory or aiding and abetting to the principal offender, it was Nicholas Godejohn, because he was helping her. And not only that, but he's going to spend the rest of his life in prison, knock on wood, hopefully not, because he loved somebody that much, that he sacrificed himself, his life, his future, his freedom for her. He doesn't get a fresh start. He doesn't get renewed freedom. He doesn't get to have a fair day in court. He doesn't have somebody advocating for him in that type of way, in that platform with millions of viewers and watchers, or somebody that's actually going to be there by his side while he serves that time. No, and he doesn't have the support and the resources to utilize the same way that Gypsy Rose Blanchard does. And it's highly unfair. It's not justice, and it's absolutely heinous and wrong. But this is the one thing that infuriates me the most, because she, as long as I'm alive, is never going to live that down. I will be here every single day to remind you all that not only is she a fraud, she's a horrible human being, she is a liar, and all of that BS story that she tells you is not true. She walked in that house for 9 years and didn't use that wheelchair except for when her and her mom were running a scam for other people outside of their own home. And she used Nicholas Godejohn.